Hello, hello, and welcome to Awaken Your Human Design. I'm Moni, and this
Mm,
is Annie, and we got
Good,
some transit weather for you today.
good to see you, Moni. I'm glad we're here. We're carrying on the pursuit of walking around the wheel. This is good.
Right? And like how Human Design New Year is starting, so we got a lot of fun
Mm,
stuff to talk about.
Indeed.
So it's January 22nd through the 27th. The sun is in gate 41 and the earth is in gate 31. And
I
then,
don't even know what to say about 4131 till we actually get into it. I think I'm gonna hold off anything at that point.
all right, we're going to
It's a
save it
weird,
for
well, it's a
later.
weird opposition, but it's amazing. It's you see why it is after we get through it all.
All right. So here we can see it on the mandala wheel. We have the sun in gate 41, which is contraction, and it's a root center gate. And then the earth in 31 is influence, and it's a throat gate.
This thing will manifest sooner or later, a desire. That's what this thing does.
Interesting.
Hmm.
All right. So here we have the sun in gate 41. This is decrease in the gate of contraction. This is the limitation of resources, which maximizes development of potential. And gate 41 is a root gate. It is part of collective and sharing circuitry, part of the sensing circuit specifically. And then gate 41 hooks up with gate 30, which is clinging fire. And the 4130 make up the channel of recognition. And the gate 41 is the desire to interact with others through feelings. It's driving towards satisfying desire and fulfilling destiny. And it's resting in the hands of the fates. It's bringing balance to unfocused and confusing restlessness by daydreaming, which is fulfilling your wildest desires. And it's holding the potential for all human experiences, but releasing and initiating only one at a time.
It's just such a. I wish I could swear here. It's such a B. 41 is. It
There,
really
that's the
is.
perfect way to do that.
It just, yeah, it just is that. And it's so fun. It's not funny to the 30 is the thing. So 41, this contraction, this decrease literally is. I explain it like the pastry chefs, whatever you call that thing that they squeeze and
Hmm.
squeeze out, spell the name with.
The
It's
frosting bed.
maximizing, it's allowing the pressure to focus to get one thing out of it. And 30 is this gate of the fates, wondering by fate, will what I want come my way? Will what I desire? And that's why 30s always feels like this clinging fire. And together, these two gates, in this opposition, 41 and 31, which we'll get to 31 in a minute, they bring this pressure to maximize a tension inside that will force out the feeling and bring out the desire that then comes into the world. And the foundation of this thing is what is the foundation of this? The foundation of this is reasonableness, and then caution is the thing. So it has to be reasonable in what it knows it can have the energy to pour out, but it's got a great caution about what should it pour out. And between these two things, that daydreaming turns into the most wild fantasies. And it says in the opposition that that leadership is driven by fantasy. It's not, leadership is driven by, the logical process, which is where that, gate is when we get to 31. It's driven by fantasy, and 40 is this incredible pressure to want to basically pour that out and put it out into the world. And it needs to be shared, is the thing. Another thing about 41 is it's part of this very complex process. It's almost like format energy that goes between the root and the solar plex. So you got gate 19, it flirts, right? It's always poking at 49. You got gate 39 in the individual process, and that thing teases, and it's like it's flirting and teasing, and it's waiting to punch through the fickle on the other side. That is an awareness. But 41 stings the 30 because remember all the stuff about how this stream of awareness isn't quite really a fully aware. It will never be the type of aware that the tribal and the individual awareness is. Do you remember hearing that, Moni?
Please tell me more. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, no, it's that this channel of desire experientialness was meant to drive humanity into the experience in the first place. But it was never meant to be fully aware, other than it can finally be aware when the crisis is over. That's about at the extent of its awareness. Um,
Is that with like the 4130 part of that channel, or just that
Yes,
overall route to the solar
the
plexus?
root to the root to the throat, that stream of awareness, the called feeling.
Up the solar plexus side?
Yep, on the solar plex side from 41 all the way up to 35.
But just
That's
that one, the 41 to the 30 to the 36 to the 35, not the other
Yep,
route to the solar plexus.
correct,
Okay.
correct. And I'm just talking about the gates on the solar plex, the one that knowingly flirts to try and get a bargain and enter into something that they can now both agree on and support. There's a big deal there,
With the
because it's
1949.
1949, acceptance, rejection, and that happens big time. And according to tribal bargains, so it's aware, it knows. In fact, the whole village talks it out half the time. Um, the 59, individual process, unique, mutative, looking to get one on one, and that's flirting all the time. I mean, that's like provoking the other side. It's basically teasing. It's teasing and
With the
teasing, trying to.
3955?
Yep,
Okay.
3955. But the 41 isn't involved in a fully aware process. It's not. It's involved in, it comes out its own self. It's not aware, 41, and 30 isn't. I mean, 30 is in the stream, but it's not fully aware. And so 30 is always getting stung by the 41. The 55 and the 39, they're dancing with each other. They know it. The 19
Okay.
and the 49 are, they know it. And so
And the 41, it's almost like the collective is too far
the
out for the
collective too far.
individual to
Right.
gain connection with it in a way that the individual gate or the tribal gate would be.
And so this 41 is not part of a total, like, really conscious awareness process. It's just a driving hunger. And that's why this is such a strange opposition. So count on a lot of like feelings starting tomorrow, things that like desires that might come up, a pressure to move, and it's adrenalized pressure to feel a tension and a type of anxiety to move in a way, but one thing at a time. It'll just pressure out a thing. Don't be surprised if lots of things happen around you during that, because whatever 30ness is around you is going to cling to whatever comes out of everybody. Whereas your gate 41 is going to be one thing. And that's the connection to the 31 when we get to that. So the only practical thing about 41 being the polarity to 31 is that 41 will only do one thing at a time. So as wild as that fantasy may be, it's still just one thing. It's tempered. When you get into the rest of that experiential stream of awareness, it's everything, but not at 41. It's just one thing. And that's sort of part of this magnificence. That's like 31. Well, let's get to 31. So I'll talk about
All
it.
right.
I'm going on with this one because this one's it starts the new year.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. I really love the analogy of the imagery of like the baker, the cake decorator with the frosting
Yeah.
bag. That
Yep.
really like sunk that in for me. So
And it's trying to squeeze because it got a little dry, so it's
so I was like, I'm just going to repeat that for the audience because that was really good. All right. So now we have the Earth and Gate 31, which is influence, the gate of influence. This is the law of friction, whether active or passive, that engenders transference and thus influence. So gate 31 is the throat gate, part of collective circuitry, which is sharing is the keynote for collective circuitry. And it is part of the understanding subcircuit. And then gate 31 links up with gate 7, which is the self in interaction. And these 731 make up the channel of the alpha. And gate 31 is designed to be influential, providing vision for a new direction and showing others how to achieve it rather than doing it for them. This is the voice of I lead or not, and it's only heard if backed by the majority.
It's so true. And that backed by the majority just shows how this whole election process happens with the collective that doesn't happen in the tribe. So another interesting aspect about this particular 41-31 polarity is that the 31 in the alpha channel, that's sheer, straight up logical process. That is, it's not concerned with anything that is in that experiential thing. It just wants to get that influence out. The alpha itself brings the identity, the I, and it's I lead. It brings basically the direction that the influence will then take, and that needing to be elected, so to speak, or brought in or agreed upon is because that's how the collective happens. But this is the most profound place, in my opinion, where the abstract collective sensing meets up with the logical collective understanding. And this is the twain at the new year, at the start of stuff, like seconds before we get into the 13. You know what I mean? That is the start of the wheel. So the start of the whole end of this last mutative process, culminating here, moving into the, like I said, inches away from gate 13, starting the whole wheel. So this is a profound place, in my opinion.
It's really interesting that there is so just as some background information on so gate 41 is when it's the human design new year, and gate 41 is like the genetic start codon for our whole genetic makeup and our whole process, right? But then there's it's gate 41, and then what does it go into? 19 and 33, I believe. And then it goes into, when it goes into gate 13 is when it is the channel of initiation that is officially starting, because there's 4 quarters within the mandala wheel that we always show you in the beginning. And so the quarter of initiation is that first one. So it's we're hitting gate 41, and then there's going to be 19 and 33, and then it goes into the quarter of initiation, which is just kind of interesting that there's this go before the story almost officially starts.
Exactly. And then when it goes into that 13-7, there comes the 7 that we were just talking about with the 31 in the channel of the alpha before. This whole thing is just crunched right in one thing, because you just as easily say the 13 and the 7 is the most profound intersection of where the collective sensing abstract meets the logical understanding collective circuitry. And and I'd say, that is, but this one here seems to strike the most fire up, is what I'm saying. Leadership and the influence that then gets broadcasted with the manifesting capacity to say I lead is it's incredibly affected and driven. It should be driven by the 7, but it's also driven by the desire. And the desire to lead, when we ultimately get into it, is to lead us to this better place. Everyone wants to lead everyone else to the promised land somehow, way, shape, or form. And 31 is what it wants to express more than anything. Dream a little bit during this week. You know what I mean? You're going to have desires and fantasies. They're going to come out in this imaginative form. They're pressuring themselves out of you. You might not even know where they come from. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. And that will want to move itself into an experience that then gets tempered by 7. Right? It just, again, inches away on the wheel as it moves into 13. It gets tempered by that. And the 7 in the army will logically make sure the forces that marshal up a direction aren't just laden down with some crazy ass fantasy. So these things, they go together.
I just had a thought too, and just kind of visualizing first with the 44 with the human design new year, and then the 1933, and then we go into 13 and 7 for the quarter of initiation. But I kind of just visualized it out. So the 41 and the 31, it's a root and a throat. The 19 and 33 is a root and a throat, right? And it's almost like that energy has to get revved and get going to get the root energy, get that adrenaline going, as well as that throat desire of leading and keeping of the story. And then it goes into the 13 and the 7 to start the quarter of initiation, because it's almost like the root and throat have to get going before the identity center is going to get that hit for direction.
And at the end of the whole process, do they leave it up to the individual to account for all of that? No, they cover the 7, the 31, the 13, the 33, and they empower them through the incredible motorized power first to 41, and then tone it down with the 19. That's got to be a little bit respectful and say, yes, ma'am, because it better have some manners or ain't getting in. Right? In that tribal thing, you can't show up like a clown. You can show up like a clown on 41.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
It's the accounting process of the final quarter, the 4th quarter of mutation, the ending of the whole year, which brings up the cycle. It's all got to get accounted for in that 33. That the 19 is I'll hook up that 33. It's way more important. You leader guys, you'll figure some stuff out. But when you do and don't get it right, I still have to account for it all. So.
Super cool. All right. I love that. I hope our audience loves that as much as we
I do too,
nerding
man.
that out.
It's just right. It tic-tac-toes between that whole 31, 33, 7, 13, empowered by the 41 and the 19. I love that. Motorized.
It's just so cool to like have this opportunity to talk it out with you, to be able to make these connections in a way that I would not have on my own.
Mm,
All right.
This wheel is gorgeous.
It's so good. It's so beautiful. All right. So incarnation crosses. First up, we have the right angle cross of the unexpected. These are people unexpectedly thrust into positions of leadership who initiate or influence others by setting trends in caring or in finding purpose. Then it'll move into the juxtaposition cross of fantasy. And these are influential people, great in jobs where recognizing trends and dreaming about the future are rewarded, indulging fantasies and virtual reality. And then finally, we move into the left angle cross of the alpha. And these are people who seduce others with their dreams and fantasies while waiting for the unexpected moment of advantage to lead them into the promised land with its expectations for what seems new or better.
And this is just such a good process, like moving into the next incarnation cross. But this unexpected, it's this unexpected places of influence and leadership that this arm of this cross is designed to bring people into. And the whole galaxy and the whole universe seems to also follow this path of the unexpected. So as these codons are in the sky, something has told me over all of this time as I keep watching it that the greater universe is somehow dialed into the very same movement. I don't know on what time frame, like a yearly time frame around the sun, like we go. I just don't know, but it feels like this formatting in our genome is the same formatting that happens in the universe, because as we move through this whole little cycle and account for it all makes such sense. And to have leadership become the unexpected, because the collective suddenly was like, oh, let's share this, and boom, out comes the leadership. And it's the collective on both sides. This is where the abstract meets the logical. Normally, those guys don't get along so great. You know what I mean? They're like, they have to share and they know it, but like one's always pissed at the other a little bit because what one, I don't know, flesh it out for me, Moni. You know what I'm saying? The logical is always a little bit like, what the F? We have to do all the work over here, and you guys just run and jump out of planes with freaking, parachutes and stuff.
I mean, that makes sense, right? Because the logical being like the splenic side of things, and
Yep.
that very rational, and it's like taking account and surviving, right? It's
Right, right.
it's very data. It's very like it's dad's in charge kind of
Data driven,
energy.
sure. Yes.
Yeah. Whereas, yeah, like on the solar plexus side, it's the experience to like, jump over, the Grand Canyon or whatever, or like jump out of the airplane to do this crazy stuff just because it could be done. And just like that drive to do something new and exciting. And I mean, that core, there's something so human about that,
Yep.
like the
Straight up
spleen is,
emotional business, that emotional side.
and you have
Absolutely.
and you have to be at a level of survival to then be able to do crazy stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like it makes sense that like the spleen is the oldest awareness because it's just surviving. This is data. This is surviving. This is the long term duration of it, and like that makes sense. And then it has to be like that's got to be covered to then even have the mental capacity to then get into like building civilizations and thinking about stuff in the way that we do. And now that we're at the end of this like awareness center of the head and moving into that solar plexus awareness, it's like, man, you got to be like in a really lucky place to be comfortable enough to do things dangerously for fun, like to jump out of an airplane or like do some crazy things. Like you got to be in a really good place that those other things are almost covered, like those bases are covered. So now you can dare to dream to travel to parts unknown.
Well, it's this section of the wheel that sort of straightens it all out and helps it become safe. The logical meets the collective throughout this whole portion of the wheel. These 3 or 4 hexagrams right in a row that finish the accounting of what took place and bring back the prodigal of what it did remember, which can be sobering. And even the logical circuitry can be like, okay, I get it now. By the time 33 is saying stuff, the logical is like, okay, good. Now I got something to work with. You're speaking, you know. You're speaking the whole, it's there to account for the whole experiential process. So that's so unexpected leadership. This leads right perfectly through the juxtaposition and the left angle, and it leads perfectly into the next one too. This whole unexpected theme. Look in our universe, it's during this time of year that all kinds of stuff happens. Pluto in unexpected when our revolution took place, which we just had again not too long ago, a few years back. All kinds of things seems to happen during the unexpected, both yearly, nodally, and greater cosmically.
It's like in
Watch for it.
the cosmic clockwork.
Yeah, this cosmic clockwork. Watch for it. Allow the unexpected. And you know what? When you don't see it, wait a month and then look back and be like, "Oh my God, it was totally unexpected."
Well, how could you expect it? It's unexpected.
Right. You might not even notice it at first, but let it happen.
All right, good
Yeah.
stuff. So moving forward, we have our hexagrams. So the sun in gate 41, which is contraction, and it's a mountain over lake. And the image reads, below the mountain is the lake, decreasing. A noble one curbs anger and restrains desires. A noble one, when he gives things up, is not without anger and desires. He just keeps them under control. Solid is the mountain that contains the lake and limits the flow of its waters. Without the evaporating waters, the mountainside would be barren. Without the mountain, the water would dissipate and be lost. Together, they create a complete landscape, emotion sustaining growth in higher experience, and control deepening your emotional capacity.
God, that one sounds like it's quite a direct correlation to the gate itself, right? To the human design gate, the whole
Mhm.
limiting of,
The contraction.
yep, yep. And they do need each other. The contraction needs the pushing out of the feeling, and the pushing out of the feeling needs the contraction to form it. Otherwise, it would just be a blob.
Well, it's
So,
like the baker's frosting, like
absolutely.
the cake maker's frosting thing is just like you need the pressure to be able to squeeze it out in the specific shape
Shape,
because
or else it's
otherwise it
no
would just be
good.
like it'll be a big blob, you know.
Blob,
So it's like
yeah.
you need the pressure, but then you need like the what would be the other side, and then like the
You,
pressure and the mush and the frosting.
you need them both. That is what the yin and yang of the noble one was pointing out with the mountain and the lake, and they need each other and they moisten each other too. You know, I
Hmm.
thought that was a good choice of words.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
solid is the mountain that contains the lake and limits the flow of its waters. I'm like, oh,
You can just sort of stop there almost
I know, it's so good.
and fill in the rest on our own.
Yeah. All right. So then next up, we have gate 31, which is influence, and it is lake over mountain. And the image reads, above the mountain is a lake, influence. A noble one accepts people with emptiness. The lake can form because the mountain makes space for it, yet still remains inwardly solid. With solid rock on the inside, there can be clear water above. Without it, there would only be mud throughout. In the same way, the noble one accepts people into an empty space. He ensures that he can hear and receive others without confusing his self with theirs.
It's a confusing place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a confusing place. That's sort of what I got over that. But the thing is, it's also quite a natural place because mountains don't usually exist over lakes, but lakes definitely exist in top of mountains, you know, like
And the
just
differentiation between the two of like the mountain holding the lake and the
mm,
differentiation that it's not just like dirt and water because then it would be mud, but that there's the differentiation and the separation of
yep,
like being
absolutely.
open to receive as a mountain in
And
that
it's
empty
very
space.
foundational. And that's what the influencer wants. The one that finally knows it leads and brings that into, you know, an action that's a manifestation. That's a foundational thing. Otherwise, you walk into, you know, crap piles of not good. So this 41 driving and literally this 31 receiving, even though the 31 should be driving because it's the manifester of the two, but it's not in this case. It's the feeling and the pressure to want a feeling and desire something. And 31 is going to pick that up and move in a nice foundational way, in a normal way, because lakes belong on tops of mountains. In fact, the lake has to surrender to the mountain.
Cool. All right. So, how are we tying this together for our viewers? What can they kind of play with and expect this week?
Expect the unexpected, literally, like right from the get go. Um, but don't expect to have your expectation fulfilled because we don't know what you'll get. It's just that this is the time of the unexpected. Expect to have desire and the desire to lead things sort of show up and to be in a place that something could happen. Plan to have a lot of opinions about what should happen because the desire is powerful and it wants to speak. That's another cool thing about these two processes. The 19 and the 41 both get a process by which they're given a throat outlet in their opposition. I mean, direct connect. So that's look for what ends up coming out of you that is a desire and you want to say it and you want to bring it into the world. Let that desire see what it is and see if you've been choking it off throughout your life and over time, because this is part of what you just went through in the process of going through the 4 weeks of the new year.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially like finally it's like, oh, happy new year, go time, right?
Yeah,
Like, so now would be that time that, okay, what are the things that are getting you excited for your like
right,
resolution,
right. What did we put together in these last, little under 4 weeks, right?
Yeah, we did have some people in the comments like saying they really enjoyed that when they were getting stressed out about their resolutions, that it was just like, no, it's not the time yet. It's not the time.
Not the time,
Yeah, it's
right,
not
right,
the
right.
time. So
I
I'm like,
want the
yay.
juicy part afterwards,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So seeing like what gets you excited, what gets you going, what fantasies are kind of popping up, and like, the ones that feel right to dive into, play around with that, and even like just taking note, because I know sometimes it's like I have a undefined root, so when I feel that root pressure, I end up starting like 20 different things, and then there's like 15 different projects laying around. Like maybe it's
Don't
okay.
let it happen. Don't let it happen because you're not used to this energy and you don't necessarily live with it. That might be a tendency.
Yeah.
So now that you say that, don't let the overdoing it distractive tendency come in here by accident.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking, is just like realize that there is going to be a lot of like pressure to like have the fantasy, but like, maybe don't necessarily jump into every single thing because it might get a little chaotic, but kind of
Right.
like taking note of like what are the fantasies that are coming to mind.
Yeah, because they'll be intense and they're supposed to be intense. Expect the unexpected and just feel it out. You're supposed to dream big here, essentially, and just don't get caught up with the expectation that your dreams are supposed to come true on some mental timeline that you think you want. We just left gate 60. Accept it that way.
Yeah, because 60 is that limitation, right? Of just
Hmm.
kind of like, hey, okay, what is holding it back? And there has to be a point where it's like you can't keep fighting something when it's limiting you, and finally like, okay, fine, it's a limitation and I accept it. And then in accepting it, then like something new can get started.
Finally get started, and that's here comes 40, the definition of something new. Gate 60 is called acceptance for a reason, and now you accepted it, move on. This is sort of just like two kids that got in a fight and they got to say they're sorry and move on, because the parents came out and did it right.
All
So
right.
anyway, well, I think we're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Happy Human Design New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you for watching and liking and subscribing and commenting and all the good stuff. And enjoy the transits this week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Next time.